Well, welcome to the first of CMJ UK's Thursday evening interviews. My name is Jane Moxon, and our guest tonight needs little introduction because Aaron Eime is a deacon at Christ Church in Jerusalem, and it's been our privilege this last week to have him for the CMJ UK Autumn Bible Week. And he's been talking to us about the last words of Moses, or in other words, the entire book of Deuteronomy. We've had 3 in-depth studies and they've been absolutely riveting. And I am so pleased to be introducing you, Aaron, tonight to this interview. So, Aaron,
Very much.
there you are. I'm beginning to wonder where you were. Aaron is your accent, Aaron. It's not from England, is it?
No, it's Australian. However, I haven't lived in Australia since 1996, so it's softened a little bit.
Softened? Oh, there we are. And this is where you're from, and I think there was some music that went with it. That's just in case you're in any doubt. You have to stand up now, yeah.
Oh, look at that. I can see my home.
So, whereabouts were you born then? Where did you actually come from?
I was born in a small town on the coast of Western Australia, right down the south, about 8 hours south from Perth, called Esperance.
So if we're looking at it, it's on the left, at the very bottom. Does it go around that curvy bit that sticks out?
It does. It goes around that curvy bit. It's actually listed on there.
Okay. And it's called?
Little dot. Esperance is a small town. It's a farming community with a little bit of gold mining, not too far away. But what it's not famous, but what it is famous for is during World War II, the United States would keep their Navy down there to keep them safe from the Japanese. So I grew up in this small little farming town that had these incredible jetties and wharves that would drift off into the sea for miles. And they were all dilapidated and breaking, but as a young kid, we could swim around them.
Swim? I was thinking, as long as you weren't sort of on top of the wharf when it drifted off into the sea.
No, they're stuck.
Were you at school there? What kind of?
Stuck into the actual bed of the ocean, but
I see.
We would swim around them. We wouldn't worry about sharks until we saw the movie Jaws, and then we all discovered that the sea was a bit dangerous.
Well, I think I know that you actually didn't go to school very long in Esperance, and that your family relocated. Where did they go?
Yeah, so my family, my father was a wool classer, which is a trade. In shearing sheds, once you shear a sheep, you take the fleece and you flay it out on a rack. And then this man comes along called the classer, and he grades the wool. He tastes it, feels it, looks at, sees how it was cut off the sheep, and he decides a class, A, B, C, or D. And whatever he says becomes the grade of the wool, which will tell you what you can do with it. Do I make a jumper out of it? Do I just knit with it? Do I have to throw it away? How much value is it? So he becomes the most hated man in the entire shearing shed, unfortunately. But that was my dad's job. And the family also ran a dry cleaning business for the local ships that would come in. And it was a nice little life growing up in the country. But eventually we moved to Queensland, went all the way to the east coast to a city called Brisbane, capital of Queensland, and that's where what I consider my formative years, where I grew up on the Gold Coast, and I went to Queensland University to study social work, psychology and social work, and that's where I came to faith and got married and then left.
So how did you come to faith? I mean, I thought you were brought up in a Quaker family, not a Quaker, a Lutheran family.
Yes, I was raised in a Lutheran family. The Lutherans of Australia are quite a strict bunch in terms of the way Lutherans go, so very, very conservative. My father's Lutheran, my mother's Anglican, so we sort of oscillated between the two. Sunday morning was to the Lutheran church, Sunday evening was the Anglican church. But being raised in a Christian family doesn't mean that you are automatically a Christian. It doesn't make you actually a believer. I knew the Bible. I had done catechesis, and I knew Martin Luther's Small Catechism. Prayed, did all that kind of stuff. But the actual moment when I knew that God was real was during my university years when I went to a creation versus evolution debate.
I believe you said you were walking past, was it a church? What was it?
It was a Baptist church. It had a big sign out the front saying creation versus evolution. And I thought I'd been doing quite well as a young kid, staying out of trouble. But once I'd gotten to university, it was wine, women, and song, and all of those in abundance. And so you'd fallen away, backslidden, whatever you want to call it. But I certainly was not walking with any God but myself. And but then I saw this sign, creation versus evolution. I thought, oh yeah, listen to these guys, give these guys a go. And
so what was it drew you to that? What was it drew you to creation and evolution if you were busy partying?
It's a good question. It could be emptiness. It could be the Lord, the Spirit. It could be hopelessness that I saw in a world without the Lord. All these kinds of things. Perhaps also in my studies as a social worker, which is a 4-year degree at Queensland University. People's problems are spiritual as well as physical. And if you ignore people's spiritual problems, you will never fix their physical problems. And but that's the way our world operates. We essentially do band-aid social work. We just put band-aids on wounds, and we never ever stop people getting hurt, which is a bit sad. And so I guess I was a bit disillusioned with the things that I was learning because they weren't really helping people, not the way that I thought that they would. When you're young and you want to change the world, you think that you go to university and you'll learn how to change the world. And then you discover very quickly that universities actually aren't designed to do that. So I went to this debate, and microbiologists, geologists, and physicists stood up. All had PhDs, all very prominent members in their field, all believed in God and all believed in the Creator. And after listening to their testimonies and their evidence, I realized that I had been rather foolish, and gave my life to God right then and there, went to the book table, got out my credit card, bought every book, and never stopped reading after that, I guess.
Wow, that's brilliant. So, Aaron, where did you meet Michelle then?
Well, my family had a spare room, and they wanted to let out their room, and a friend of mine had a sister who was looking for a place to stay while she was doing her studies. So my parents said, yep, she can come. And there you go. So Michelle moved into my family and lived with my family for several years while we were both studying at Queensland University. She did anthropology and I was studying social work.
Wow.
And we would travel everywhere together. We even got a job in the same restaurant together, pay our way through college. Most people actually thought she was my sister.
What did Michelle think about your... Yeah, what did Michelle think about your conversion, your experience about creation and evolution? Did she agree with you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. She actually came along with me. So we were there together.
Uh-huh.
Yep, she was just as impacted as I was.
Oh, I see. Right, okay. So you got married.
So we shared all the books. Sorry?
Yeah. And
yes,
after you were married You
Yeah,
moved.
so we got engaged, and everybody sort of complained and thought that no, they can't do that because they're actually brothers and sisters. We sort of kind of had to remind people that that actually wasn't true. And we got we got married, and instead of doing the house, the car, the cat, the kid, the dog, and the white picket fence, which is good, I'm not saying they're bad. That's great for a lot of people. We wanted to travel and see the world before we settled down. So we thought that what we would do is Australia being part of the British Commonwealth, we were legally allowed to apply for working visas in England and Canada. So we did. And it's a simple process. You just fill out a form and fax it off, and that's it. And then we literally hopped on a plane and flew to Canada. Were granted working visas right there at the border. And we lived in Canada for a year. And we used the opportunity to work, enjoy what Canadian life was like. And we began right in the west in British Columbia, next to that island off the coast, the place called Vancouver.
So is that the right or the left?
On the left, in British Columbia. And we traveled from British Columbia all the way through to Nova Scotia, which is your teal-colored thing, right on to the right, and to a place called Halifax.
Grief.
And
what was that like traveling?
Fantastic. Sorry.
What was it like traveling? How did you travel? In fact, but what was it like doing that? It's such a long way, isn't it?
Well, this is the year was 1996. So it's a different world. There's no internet. There's no cell phones. You're kind of using a little booklet called the Lonely Planets Guidebook, which is an app that you physically have to open these days. A book. That was our way we got around the world. And Lonely Planet suggested you do this thing called the Auto Drive Away Company, which is a company that is approached by people, well-to-do people who have very nice cars and would like those cars moved from usually one side of the country to another. And instead of putting them on a train, which costs thousands of dollars, they allow tourists to drive their cars to them for free. So Michelle and I drove some very nice vehicles around North America for doctors and for lawyers and for a few companies as well that needed.
So
that's how we did it.
How far is it? How far is it across Canada?
Oh, days, 5, 6, 7, like a long time. So here's the United States.
So what condition was the car in when you got there?
Well, it's usually a very nice car, and it's usually in very nice condition. All you have to do is get it to a certain address by a certain day. You fill it with petrol, and you take it through the car wash, and you do a nice detail on it, and you drop it off. And what usually happens is you call the guy and you say, "Sir, I have your vehicle. Would you like me to drop it off at such and such address as agreed?" And what usually happens is the guy says, "Actually, I'm a little busy this weekend. Do you mind keeping it for another couple of days and just get it to me on Monday?" And no problem.
So how long did that take you in all? How long were you in Canada?
We were in Canada all up for about just shy of 18 months, and traveled all the way through Mexico, America, down into Mexico.
Next you went to America from there. So you were 18 months in total, or in Canada?
Yeah, kind of in total. So 12 months in Vancouver, and then in and out of Canada and across Canada for about another 6 months or so. And
so now we're in America.
Yeah, the adventure continues. We were traveling all the way through America, going to all different churches. We had the opportunity to visit just a plethora of churches. I was opened up to how big the kingdom of heaven is in the world. When we were living in Australia, it's a little sheltered. You kind of know the Anglican world, the Lutheran world, the Baptist world, and there's not a lot else. But then when you get into North America, the sheer number of churches, and there was Christian radio 24/7. Didn't exist in Australia when I was growing up. That was incredible. Christian worship music that was flourishing. It was just beginning to flourish. It was absolutely wonderful. It was actually a really good a good little piece of cement to our faith.
And when
I
the
left
Jesus movement
Australia,
happened?
So when I left Australia, I was
the Jesus.
Some friends of mine asked a lot of my non-Christian friends, and I had many as a social worker. They had said, "Aren't you a bit nervous going around traveling?" And I said, "No, don't you understand? I'm part of the biggest gang in history. There's 2 billion people in my gang. Every single city that I go to, I'm going to be able to meet my brothers and sisters." And that's exactly what we did. Even when we were in Mexico, we went to church on Sunday. Everyone was speaking Spanish. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but they were my brothers and sisters.
You went down into Mexico.
Yeah.
And which had been your favorite state in America, though, in the States? Which had you enjoyed?
Okay. So I enjoyed Denver, Colorado. I enjoyed Colorado. That was a very nice place. The Mile High City, which is kind of almost in the middle. That was one of my great state. If you're a tourist, then states like Texas are fantastic. Just Boston is amazing. They're great cities for tourists. You can just get lost in those cities and just wander for days, enjoying the museums and the life. I went to New Orleans before it got wiped out by Hurricane Katrina. That was really good. And that's actually where I met my first Israeli in Louisiana. We crossed.
Was that significant in your? Was that significant?
I didn't know it at the time. We were to get around the USA. We did a few auto drive-away companies, but we also took Amtrak. Amtrak is this really impressive rail company that they have driving all over the USA. And if you're a tourist, well, back then, here we are talking about 1996, 97, you could get a month-long rail pass for $100, $120. And that means you could just hop on a train and drive. So what we did is we would take the last train out of a city and overnight sleep on the train, just in our seats, arrive in a city, get off the train, put our bags in the storage, wander around the city, then come back late at night and take the next train out and just keep going from city to city to city, sleeping on the train, so we didn't have to pay for a hotel. We young backpackers trying to save money, and that was one of the ways to do it. It was great. We enjoyed it.
So how long were you in the States?
All up. Well, I've been to America many times now because of work, and so all I can say is I've been to most states, and I've actually spent some sizable time in America over our life. We've spent about 6 months all up in Denver and about 6 months all up in Ohio, plus then seeing large other sections of the country.
But at this point in your life, you left the States and went down into Mexico.
Yeah, and
how long
we
were you in
crossed the
Mexico?
border into just for 8 days. We crossed the border into from Texas, from Phoenix into Nogales, which is a border town, and then we took a train to a place called the Copper Canyon. When we were in the Grand Canyon, we had read in the Lonely Planets guidebook
Is the Copper
that there was
Canyon
actually a
in
bigger
Mexico?
one. Yes, there's everyone knows the Grand Canyon. It's an impressive canyon, and it is. It's an impressive hole in the ground. You just got to go and see it. It's an amazing geological feature. But there's a bigger one. There's a canyon in Mexico that's 5 times larger than the Grand Canyon, and I wanted to see it. And it's in the middle of Mexico, in a place called Chihuahua, and you have to take a train there, and the train stops at this outlook point where you get off and you only have 15 minutes. That's all you have. The train stops, everyone jumps out, everyone takes their photos. Mexicans sort of appear out of the bush, sell you all kinds of things, food, this, that, and the other. And then you hop on the train, and the train will take you up into the mountains to a little village called Creel, where that's where you stay. And you stay there for a couple of days, and then you rent a donkey, and then you actually take donkey tours, which are days, going into this massive canyon that's bigger than the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
well
So-
worth it.
Yeah. So after Mexico, you went to England. So you left and you went to the
Yes.
UK, and
Yes.
from there, how long were you in the UK? How long were you?
So we left after all of this time traveling around Canada, America, and Mexico, Michelle and I, we had spent a lot of money on planes, trains, and automobiles. So we had decided that when we arrived in England, the first thing we would do is we would purchase a car. That would be the way we would get around England. That would save us lots of money. So we arrived at Heathrow, got off the plane, picked up our work permits, which we had already pre-applied for as British citizens of the British Empire, and I went straight to the information counter. The girl asked me, "So how can I help you?" Probably expecting something like, "Can you recommend a nice hotel?" And I said, "How do I buy a car?" And she said, "Well, we don't get many of those requests here." She gave me a copy of The Loot. I don't know if this publication actually exists anymore. We went to Earl's Court in London, and we bought a 1973 VW rust bucket camper van, and we drove that all over England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. And
Wow.
after
How long
getting to
for?
see the UK, that took us about 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, you have a smaller
So
country.
I'm going to
than
have to
America,
fast
but
forward here, because how long were you in Britain before you decided to go to the place you have been
Israel.
for a long time?
Yes. So after our little adventure, we got a job in the Cotswolds, the most beautiful village in all of England, according to William Morris, and it really is, at the Bybury Court Hotel. And we did that for about 6 months before getting another contract with the a Moreland company to run a bar diner in Watford, North London, and which we also very much enjoyed. And then when that contract had expired, Michelle and I took our 1973 VW camper van and we drove from London, England to Israel.
Oh my goodness.
That
Why
took about-
Israel?
Well, that wasn't actually on the map at the time.
Can you see it on that map?
You can see it on the map at the time. Yeah, it wasn't the
this
destination we were going to go to.
Yeah.
We met a friend in Austria who had just come back from doing a teen challenge mission in Kazakhstan. So we knew lots of believers by this stage, and we're really getting involved in meeting other people who shared the same faith. And we picked him up at the Vienna airport and said, "Hey, mate, it's great to see you here. Would you want to drive around with us for a couple of weeks? We're not doing anything." And he said, "My mother is a volunteer in Israel. Is it okay if we go and see her?" And I thought, sure, we'll go drop you off. So we drove to Israel, taking the ferry from Greece to the port of Haifa.
Wow. What was that like?
I thought, well, it was a 3-day ferry ride, which they don't do anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was really good. When we drove off the ferry, I fully expected the Israelis to arrest us or do something, like tear the car apart looking for drugs or something. These young hippies that are driving this silly van. All the Israelis did, this is in 1998, all the Israelis did was when we drove off the boat, they looked at us, they looked at the car, and they said, "What is the purpose of bringing the car into Israel?" And I was struck by the question. I saw to drive it. I couldn't think of anything else to say. And he said, okay, that's it. You just go over there, fill in your paperwork, pay your little insurance fine or whatever it is that you had to do. And there we were, dropped off our friend in Israel, and then we just camped around Israel for 3 weeks. It was great.
What had you intended to do then when you dropped your friend off? What were you going to do?
Visit Israel. I mean, we were believers, so we wanted to experience the land. In fact, I wanted to read the Bible in situ. I wanted to go to the Mount of Beatitudes and read the Beatitudes. I wanted to visit Mount Tabor and read the Transfiguration experiences. I wanted to go to Cana.
Did you do that?
And say, okay. Yeah, we did all that. That was absolutely fantastic.
What was it like? Tourists, okay? What was it like standing on the Mount of Beatitudes? Yeah. What was it like for you? Standing there.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I mean, as a tourist, it was initially awe-inspiring. Everything was awe-inspiring. However, I have to admit that I don't think I got as much spiritual benefit as I do now going to those places, where I have a deep conscious choice to say, I don't just want the flashy gimmicks and to look at the little movie that they show you. I actually really want to sit and I want to dwell on, what did you do here and why? Why this place? Why this hill, Lord? Why not the one down the road? What's so special here? What is actually so special about your teaching about this place? And there's a thing I've learned in my 22 years here in Israel, is that geography is theology. There's a reason things occur in places. And there's a reason why they occur in a certain time in terms of like the Jewish calendar. And that insight can really enrichen your faith walk and your knowledge of the Messiah and his plans for us.
So did you stay from then on in Israel? I mean, was that the beginning of your 22 years or what happened?
It was, but that wasn't our choice initially. We were the Eime plan, the Aaron and Michelle Eime plan, before any kids, was to take our little VW camper van, which was registered in London, and drive it all the way back to London, where we would sell it, recoup our money. We had another whole year's working visa that we hadn't used, so we were going to use that in London. Earn British pounds, which is, but back then even more, was a very powerful currency. It was like 3 to 1 Australian dollars. And then we would finish up, pay whatever taxes we owed, and then move back to Australia, transfer our money over, which would triple it, buy a house, and live happily ever after and have a bunch of kids. And I'm sure God still thinks, yeah, that's a nice plan, but I got one better for you.
Nice plan, but wrong place.
In wrong place, yeah. Yes, indeed. What actually happened is we were camping at the Dead Sea, and which is an incredible part of the planet. Okay, this is the lowest point on Earth that you can still breathe. Where you actually still stand up and breathe. The lowest point on the planet, and you float and you bob in this incredible salt sea, and it's an amazing experience. And then at 5 o'clock, all the tourists hop back in their tour buses and they all drive off to their hotels and go for their dinner time. And anybody who's left just camps on the Dead Sea. And there's people pitch up their tents, sleep under a tree. So we had a camper van. So we decided we would just camp for a few days on this incredible geological feature. All these Bedouin spontaneously generate out of the rock in these large family groups. And there's these families of Arabs in like numbers of 30, 40, 50. And there's one over here and one over there and one over there, all lining the shore of the Dead Sea. And in typical Middle Eastern hospitality, they all invite you to come to their dinner. And they say, come eat with me. Don't eat with that other family, bad family. You want to eat with me. So we accepted the first invitation that we had, and we ate with this Arab family. We couldn't understand a word they said. But they were really generous and really happy, and they fed us their food. And in the morning, we got unbelievably sick. We had the Great White Throne judgment. Okay? That's the judgment throne of Revelation 22. You needed to be somewhere near a Great White Throne at all times. We had been through Mexico, ate everything, didn't get sick. We had been through some dodgy places in Portugal, didn't get sick. We had been through Turkey, and we didn't get sick. We came to Israel, and it was, near-death experience. And we really needed to just find somewhere where we could recover. So we got our little Lonely Planets guidebook, and we flipped through looking for somewhere, and what we found was a little advert for Christ Church, Jerusalem. In the 1998 Lonely Planets guidebook, all it said was nice gardens, clean toilets. We went, let's go there. So we drove from the Dead Sea to Jerusalem. We came to Christ Church, which they have a car park in the back. We parked our car and we stayed next to the bathrooms. And for 5 days, we just sat in the courtyard, reading the Bible, just talking to people. And we discovered here was this community of Arabs who believe in Jesus, Jews who believe in Jesus, and Gentiles from all over the world who believe in Jesus. And there were Baptists, and Lutherans, and Catholics, and Pentecostals, and they're all worshiping together, and they're marrying each other. And we thought, oh my gosh, who are you people? And because normally you expect Arabs and Jews to be fighting all the time, but these guys were doing the complete opposite. We thought, this is the kingdom of heaven. Who are you? And they explained that this Christ Church was attached to a ministry called CMJ, which we'd never heard of before, and it was an Anglican mission, and we're like, wow, that's impressive, because we'd been actually attending Holy Trinity Brompton when we were in London. So by this stage, we had realigned ourselves with the Anglican Church and thought, wow, this is great. They then turned around and said, we're desperate for volunteers. Can you please help us? And Michelle and I thought, we not really, because we kind of want to go back to England. Kind of got this little plan going, and so we had to go pray about it. We said, please can we go pray? And so we went to the Galilee, and we sat on the shore of the Galilee, and we opened up, which to a spot that we had sort of become like our favorite, which is near Nofkinosar, Kare Dashe. There's little beaches there that are really, really nice. Opened up our Bible, read a psalm, prayed, dear Lord, what are we supposed to do? Looked at each other and said, did you hear from God? Nope. Okay, and read another psalm, pray, did you hear from God? Nope. We did that for 3 days. Okay, didn't hear a thing. And so we drove back, fully intending to say, no, haven't heard from the Lord. We'll be off, thanks. Have a nice life. Might support you, though, when we get a good job in London. So we sat down next to the opposite, the vicar, whose name was Ray Lockhart. And he says, so you guys have prayed. What's your answer? And I leaned forward to say no, and out came, yep, we'll stay. And I think Michelle's face just like dropped, and I'm thinking, what did I just say that for? And it's only later that I read a proverb which mentions that a man's heart decides his way, but the Lord guards his lips. Like,
wow, brilliant.
There you
now
go.
I happen to know, Aaron, that you went on to have 3 children, and I wonder if we could have that clip right now, please. Oh, I remember Aaron Eime saying to me that he was bringing his son up as a knight and that he believed in knighthood. And I said, why is that, Aaron? Tell us.
Okay. Well, our son was born in a small town, you might not have heard of it, Bethlehem. And so he was born in the same place as King David and as the Messiah and as about maybe 80 to 90,000 other Arabs. But it was a very special place. We thought, how are we going to bring this boy up? And we read all the books you're supposed to read when you're a parent, what to expect when you're expecting and all those things. And but the one that struck us the most was how to train a knight. And the premise of this book was many cultures have rites of passage that teach boys when they're actually a man. But in the West, in our secular world, we don't have that anymore. In fact, most men don't even know how to be men anymore, and which is a bit sad. But there was only one rite of passage in our Western culture, the knight, where he trained a squire, and he trained him in honor, in chivalry, and he knew when he became a knight because he was given a sword and a shield and spurs, and there was a ceremony. So what we did is we told Micah that we need you to basically be a modern day knight. We're going to train you up as a knight. You will understand chivalry. You will defend ladies. You will honor God. There's a list of knightly codes. They all come from the Bible. So he has a shield in his room. And on that shield is written all the Bible verses he's had to memorize and learn about honor, loyalty, trust, truthfulness, compassion, mercy, defense. We taught him to, if someone picks on you, to turn the other cheek. But if you see someone beating up a lady, then you defend her with your full force. So he studied swordsmanship and martial arts and things, and then he's now graduated to the IDF. So he's now putting that into real practice. Can you believe that?
Right, that's right. So Aaron, when you were as you went on in Christ Church, eventually you became a deacon. I just want to ask you very quickly. I think, did Kelvin Crombie have some? He was alongside you at this time, was he?
He was. The guy who pushed me into academic studies was Reverend David Pileggi. He suggested that I go to Hebrew University.
Yes.
My first studies in social work had nothing to do with theology. But I went to university, in Hebrew University. I studied Hebrew so I could do the course. And I got a full scholarship, which was a bit strange at the time, but I got it. So I took that as a God thing. And I studied historical geography, archaeology, these sort of things, but also early Jewish and Christian interpretation of the Bible. And I studied how Jews and Christians interpreted the Bible between the years 300 and 300 BC and 300 AD. And in that 600-year window, we're still forming the Bible. We're still trying to figure out what books are in and what books are out, and which versions of them are we actually going to read. To me, that was fascinating, and I grew in my faith and appreciation of the Jewish roots of our faith, and this led me into ordination with the Anglican Church. I was ordained by the Bishop of Bolivia.
Right, and sort of later on, you started studying with rabbis. Now, what made you want to study with rabbis?
Well, they asked me. And it was I moved into a building like everybody else in Israel. We live in apartments, and in the apartment I lived in, it had six. In the building I lived in had 6 apartments, and the community of the building have to get together to pool in some money to pay for the the extremities, the lights outside, the gardens, and the rubbish collection and stuff. In Hebrew, you call it a vadbite. And I went to the meeting initially, the first meeting, and everyone was arguing, and I couldn't figure out why they're all arguing. But there was a rabbi who was the leader of the vadbite. He lived in the building. Nice man. As everybody left, I went up to him and said, Mordecai, what is actually going on, and what is the problem? He said, people don't want to pay their fees. I said, okay, give me a list of what everybody owes. He wrote a list out. I went back to my apartment and I put on all of my robes. I put on my tunica alba, my white robe, put in my stoles. I put on the cincture and all that. I just did myself a huge pectoral cross, and I went and knocked on all these doors of these Jewish guys, all my Jewish neighbors, and said, "Hi, my name's Aaron, and if you don't want me to come and knock on your door every day dressed like this, then this is how much you owe." And everybody paid. And then I went back, took all my clothes off, put my normal clothes on, went back to Mordecai, gave him all the checks that everybody owed. He said, "Wow, how did you do that?" I said, "Mordecai, I put the fear of God in a man." We became friends. And then he invited me to his Bible study. I told him, I said, "Look, I'm not Jewish, I'm a Christian." And he goes, "Yes, I know, but you speak Hebrew and you seem to really have a love for God's word. We would love to have the Christian input into our little study." And I've been doing that for 14 years.
What's the best thing that you've learned from studying with the rabbis?
I've learned an appreciation that how's this? We call the Bible the Holy Bible. And we usually call it the Holy Bible because that's the title on the front page. But Jewish people call this divine language. And what they mean is that when God speaks, it's the word of God. Yes. But if this is God's word, then the words are important. The sounds of the words are important. And the words that God chooses not to say are just as important.
Wow.
So that was a real eye-opener to me and has been an absolutely incredible booster of our faith. For example, when Abraham and Isaac are going up the hill, Isaac turns to his father and says, where's the sacrifice? Where's the olah? And Abraham says, God will provide a lamb, which is a seh in Hebrew. But he doesn't. He ties up Isaac and he looks up and he sees a ram. But the Jewish exegesis says, but Abraham said, God will provide a lamb. But he didn't. And so therefore, ever since Isaac, we're waiting for the Lamb of God, which is exactly the title John the Baptist gives Jesus when he meets him for the first time. Behold, the Lamb of God. And no disciple turns around and says, what are you talking about? He's a door, he's a tree, he's a branch, you know. But,
wow, Aaron, this absolutely, yeah. It's jewels, actually, and your Bible studies that you do, but I'll speak about that at the end, are just rich. But I just want to move on to the fact that after you became a deacon, after you've been in Christ Church a while, the children are growing up, you start going and traveling internationally and speaking for CMJ and Bible teaching. And I just wonder if we could have those maps up to show the places that you've been. You went back to Canada, and in fact, you spent a whole year in Canada, didn't you, as a family? I don't really want to talk about this now, sadly, but you were in Canada that was for a year, wasn't it?
Canada and America for a year.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then after that, and as well as that, if we could just go through the different countries. You've spoken many times, yeah?
Yeah.
Is Great Britain a favorite of yours, or which country would you say was the best?
Which country is the best?
We're all listening.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I've got a soft spot for Great Britain because of the history of that country. I also enjoy Canada. I've got a lot of friends there as well. So those are two of my favorites. Yeah.
And then you've also been to, well, your States, we've said, and the next one, you've spoken obviously in Ireland. Could we have the next map? If we could have the next. Hong Kong. I wanted
So
to get to Hong Kong
CMJ,
because you.
yes, CMJ
Yeah.
has a branch in Hong Kong, and that has given me the opportunity to go and speak to our Chinese brothers and sisters in Hong Kong and China. All up, I've spent 5 months in mainland China with the underground church.
And I do believe there was an incident in a certain international airport, Aaron.
Yes, well,
that people may have heard of that particular airport. Or they might have heard of this.
Some might have. Yeah, I'm actually now banned from Wuhan for all the wrong reasons. But it does show you a little bit about my character. So when we went to Wuhan International Airport to leave, there were hundreds and hundreds of Chinese girls out the front of the airport, and I asked some people, "What are they all waiting here for?" And they said, "Oh, there's a Korean rock star who's about to arrive." Oh, well. So we went into the airport, and then I looked around at the guys who had been chaperoning me, and I said, "Look, I'm going to put some dark sunglasses on. I'm going to just run outside and go, 'Hey, I'm here,' and see what happens." And they said, yeah, and we'll stand behind you and take photos. And so that's what I did. And I went out, and initially the initial girls saw me and screamed. And then they realized who I was, and they stopped screaming. But then it was too late, because all the people, from 30, 40 meters away, all they heard was girls screaming. So they started screaming. So hundreds of girls started screaming and all rushing towards the airport, which made all the security come and go, "Who started all this mess?" And there's me going, "Oh, I think that might have been me." So, yeah. Anyway.
So you were banned from Wuhan.
I was banned from Wuhan.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a story. Okay, so I think we're almost going to have to wrap up, but I want to ask you some quick fire questions, if I may, and see what you come up with. These are just quick, so they're just one sentence type things. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. What's your favorite film?
Princess Bride.
And so what's your favorite TV program? That's if you get to watch it.
Yes, I know. I like NCIS.
Favorite drink?
Cop show. My favorite drink?
Favorite food?
Jack Daniels.
Oh, yeah? Oh, Jack Daniels.
I like salmon.
Favorite song or hymn?
Ooh, my favorite hymn. Well, usually I really like to sing the more contemplative ones, like Fairest Lord Jesus. However, I have to say that having some young children, I've really enjoyed Skillet. So good, solid Christian rock music.
Oh, Fairest Lord Jesus is my favorite too, anyway, but I don't know about Skillet. What about your favorite Bible book?
My Leviticus.
Could have almost guessed. Why? Why is Leviticus best?
Because Genesis tells you that God's a creator. Exodus tells you he's a redeemer and a lawgiver. But only Leviticus tells you that he's holy. And all the really good laws, which we all quote, like love your neighbor as yourself, all come from Leviticus. We often think of Leviticus as a terrible book, but it's the best. It shows us the heart of God and why he's holy.
And tell people about the Bible studies that you do on Wednesdays.
So all the information that I've learned and then have continued to study from Hebrew University, studying with rabbis, I want to give back to the church. We call it the Jewish Roots of the Christian Faith, and I get the opportunity to teach through CMJ platforms. So on a Wednesday night, We study the Bible. We are currently actually going through Leviticus. We had just done Galatians, but now we're doing Leviticus. We do one New Testament, one Hebrew Bible at a time. And we go verse by verse, drip by drip, and we try and work out how the Lord is speaking to us now. How do we become better disciples of Jesus? By looking at the Bible in its Jewish context.
That's really awesome. Earlier on, when you were talking about why you came back to the Lord, and it was because of this evolution creation debate, what one argument against evolution would you say is the most powerful?
Blood clotting.
Explain.
When you cut yourself, blood comes out. Then it gets hard. Then it clots and forms a scab. Then the scab gets itchy. And when you rub it, next minute there's new pink skin underneath. How does that happen? Well, it happens by a series of chemical reactions inside your blood cell. Inside each individual blood cell are a series of enzymes. And each of these enzymes is formed into a chain, meaning it's like a sequence. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And each enzyme only has one function. Only one. For example, enzyme A, it discovers that there's a hole in your skin. And then it tells enzyme B, we've got a hole. We need to start cutting blood cells in half so we can plug them together. Enzyme C makes sure that your blood doesn't clot in your brain. It actually clots where the hole is. Enzyme D does, each of these things has a job. If you remove one enzyme, just one, out of the sequence, blood doesn't work. It's called minimal function. Everything has to be there in a sequence. Otherwise, the animal will bleed to death. You will never procreate, and you will never be able to pass on your genes. And so this a gentleman by the name of Michael Behe, who's a microbiologist, wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. And he said, blood clotting. Someone in the evolutionary world tell me how blood formed, because it looks like it needs to form instantaneously in the sequence for it actually to function. No one's been able to answer his challenge since 1990 when he wrote it.
Wow, that's
Life
awesome.
Is in the blood.
Whoa. Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. And which is your favorite place in Jerusalem? I know when we were there at the Hanukkah tour in 2018, you took us around Jerusalem, and it was to places we'd not been. Fascinating. Which is yours favorite?
My personal favorite now is probably the Church of Joseph of Arimathea in the Holy Sepulchre. It's a Syrian Orthodox church.
Why? Yeah. What is it you like?
It's a small church. It right in the back of the Holy Sepulchre is a tucked away little church, and it's tiny, and it belongs to the Syrian Orthodox, who are Syrians inside Israel. So they're a very small community, cut off from the rest of their community because of politics. They're poor, they're impoverished. No one seems to like them. Yet they faithfully guard their little tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and they worship the Lord without fail. And anyone can go and worship with them on a Sunday. Their little building burnt down, so their altar of wood is all burnt. Everything's dilapidated. All of their icons are all blackened from a fire that happened in the 1800s. They're so poor they haven't been able to repair anything. But they will faithfully go and put their communion bread and water and wine on this little altar and worship the Lord. And when I've watched them, I've just thought, well done, guys. Absolutely fantastic. You will never stop worshiping until Jesus comes. And that I like. Against all odds. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Aaron Eime. That's a brilliant place to finish. That they will never stop worshiping until Jesus comes, and nor will we. And I'd like to thank you so much for joining me now. I've just got 1 or 2 more slides. Don't go anywhere. But if we could have the last slides. Yeah, Aaron is going to be talking on the last words of Moses by Zoom in Glasgow and Preston next week on Monday and Wednesday. He'll be in Northern Ireland on the 21st on the Thursday. And to find out more details, look on CMJ's websites and things. Next slide. And Thursday evenings with CMJ UK are going to continue these interviews. It's a series of autumn interviews. And I have Richard Harvey on the 25th of November. Richard Harvey is quite well known. He's a Jewish guy who used to be with Jews for Jesus. He's really more of a researcher, theologian. And actually, there's another Thursday evening, the week before that, on the 18th of November. And this is about a woman called Esther Lever. And some of you will know who that is, but she's an awesome woman. And her daughter, Angela Oakley, graciously is going to do an interview with me all about her mum. And it says there, Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And I'm asking you to join me to hear the story of one who did just that. So is that the last slide we've got? And I think then it's time to say goodbye. So I would like to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a great privilege and a pleasure to talk to Aaron. We could have talked a lot longer, but I think you'd like to hear this final music as we leave tonight. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining me. And let's sit back and listen to this one more time.